Hi medieval friends, Deirdre here, and today we're going to make porridge. It's a very easy customizable recipe and we're going to make two different kinds. The porridge that we're going to make is using steel cut oats as the base. You can use barley, wheat berries, or even just good old-fashioned rolled oats if you don't want to wait the long time for them. We're going to make two kinds. We're going to make a savory one with mushrooms, fish, and leeks. And we're going to make a sweet kind that most of you are probably more familiar with, using raspberries, honey, and goat cheese. You could easily use Philly cream cheese or even traditional Skyr if you want. Since traditional porridge takes up to a half hour to cook, we're going to start by cooking our oats. Steel cut oats are a 4-to-1 ratio. If you have 1 cup of oats, you want to have 4 cups of liquid. If you are making 1 serving, you're going to use a 1/4 cup of oats and 1 cup of liquid. So we have 1 cup of oats and 4 cups of milk. And we are going to pour our milk into our pan. And we're going to turn the burner on high. You do not have to wait for it to boil. You can add your oats right away. If you want to add 1/4 teaspoon of salt, dash of salt, whatever, this is when you would add it. We're going to use a wooden spoon to stir. And you want to keep an eye on it at first, because once it boils, it will bubble up and boil over if you're not careful. Once you bring it to a boil, you want to turn it down to simmer on low for about 25 to 30 minutes. When it comes to milk recipes, you want to watch for the boiling for these little bubbles at the edge. You want to make sure that you're stirring it when that starts happening, otherwise you can scald your product. See how the bubbles are starting in the middle? We're going to wait for it to boil just a little bit more, and then we're going to turn it down to low. That looks pretty good. We don't want it to boil over, so we're going to turn it down to low and go work on our savory ingredients. At this point, you might be asking yourself, why in the world are we putting fish in oatmeal? Well, one of the sagas mentions that Thor really enjoyed some herring in his porridge. So we're going to try it out. So the first thing we're going to do is our trusty cast iron skillet is getting about a tablespoon of butter while it's set to medium. And there's our oats cooking right next to it. So we're going to just grease up this pan a little bit and get some butter going in there. And we're going to add our leeks. I like my onions and leeks just a little on the caramelized side, so I like them almost burnt. You do not have to do yours that way, but I think they take a minute to cook, so we're going to do those first. While our leeks are cooking, we're going to reach over and stir our oats. Nice and steamy, a little bubbly. The Vikings would have used buttermilk or some other kind of more fermented milk that would last. They're not exactly keeping gallon jugs in their refrigerator. So if you want to try it with buttermilk, that's absolutely acceptable. They would have saved the milk for the babies to eat when they were born. So they're not, milk necessarily wasn't a big part of Viking life, but buttermilk, butter, cream, those kinds of things were. And now that our leeks are good, and yeah, some of them are starting to brown, so we're going to add our fish, because that's going to take just a little bit longer to cook than the mushrooms. Now the fish is added, and just kind of stir that around, make sure it doesn't stick to the bottom too much. When the fish is all white, then you'll know that it's done. You don't want to have any of this pink, lighter color. You want a nice, opaque, just like chicken. See how that's still a little, you want it white and flaky. When it starts breaking apart, it's pretty good. And just like that, our fish is all cooked through. You can see how it just breaks apart real easy. So that is good. We're going to add our mushrooms. Give it another good stir. Turn this down to low. Now if you wanted, you could add something like heavy cream, or even maybe some beer to it if you wanted. And make sure you deglaze the pan and get all these good little bits off. And your topping is ready. Definitely starting to thicken up. You can feel how much heavier it is to move the spoon around than when we first put this on the stove. You know, we tend to view oatmeal as more of a sweet breakfast thing. Maple syrup, peaches and cream, strawberries and cream. But reading about the Vikings and how they looked at porridge and how they did breakfast, it makes a lot more sense, and it's a lot heartier. And if you think about oats as a grain, much like wheat or rice instead of oatmeal, then it makes a lot more sense to add things like onions and fish to breakfast when you're only going to eat 2 meals a day. You need the protein and the long-term carbs, the complex carbs, to keep you fueled and full and give you energy for the day. And that, my friends, is some porridge. Now for your toppings. So we've taken our 4 servings of porridge and divided it into 4 containers. We've got our mushroom, leek, and fish over here. And we've got the raspberry, goat cheese, and honey over here. We're going to take just about an ounce of the cheese. You can use cream cheese, you can use Skyr, you can use Greek yogurt, whatever you want. And we're going to add just a handful of raspberries, which I don't know about this color, but raspberries definitely grew in Viking settlements. And then we're going to add our honey. Happy feast, everyone!